So there. What I'm going to do tonight is just 6 slides, basically, or 5 slides, actually going to have a look at the construction planning quiz. All the other assignments have been marked. You've got the final results for those, so you should be in good shape already. So just a few short hints, and some of the stuff came through in that email that I sent earlier on during last week. I strongly advise you guys to go and play with the practice quiz. I mean, just go and do it a few times over and over again until you score at least say 14 out of 20 for that, and then you'll know what type of questions to expect, and you'll know how to handle the system. And you have 2 hours to do this quiz, and it's really a lot of time, so don't rush, and make sure that when you're going to attempt it, that you lock yourself in a nice room and you've got your partner looking at the dogs and the kids and everything, and that you can focus on it. And make sure that you have a notepad with you with all your writing utensils and everything, and make copious amounts of notes. Alright, so some of the questions do repeat, right? So those questions will definitely be the same. So all the calculation questions will be the same. The questions dealing with the critical path analysis, critical path methods, all of those questions will be exactly the same. Alright, so you also have a lot of time to do this, so don't rush yourself. You can do go and sit down, get your stuff ready, and do maybe a session this week or next week, and then take a day or so off, and then do another one in a week's time. Just make sure that you do it before the 16th of October, because that's the last day that we're going to have it. There's going to be 2 attempts. Alright, so when you log into the system, you'll see it will tell you there's 2 attempts. What we do is we keep the highest mark. Alright, so if you scored 70 for the first one and you scored 75 for the second one, 75 is going to be your final mark. And alternatively, if you scored 80 for the first one and 50 for the second one, 80 is going to be your final mark. So don't worry, I'll give you guys the benefit of the doubt there. If I see it's going horribly wrong, we might run it for a 3rd attempt. But at the moment, I think we're sort of on 2. Last year we had good results with just 2 attempts. Alright, a few hints on the system. The maximum mark for each question is like you saw in the practice quiz. It's on the top left hand corner of the screen. So if you have a look at that, it will give you an indication of what you need to do. Is it a calculation? Is it going to be more than one answer? And it also tells you that this question has more than one answer. Alright, if it has more than one answer, then it means that you have to have multiple ticks. Alright, it does not mark negative, so if you get the wrong one, it doesn't deduct marks for that. Alright, so just make sure you choose the right one, and you'll score well. Alright, if we look at the question types, there's 2 types of questions for this quiz. The first type is question type number 1, and these are the questions that will repeat. Alright, so 70% of the questions will be repeated. So I basically tell you that if you pay attention to those questions, you'll be able to score well. Alright, so these are going to be typically calculations and diagrams. Alright, so if you have your assignment number 1 and assignment number 2 handy, the types of questions that I'm going to ask you are going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to ask you to focus on a crashing of a project. I'm going to give you information on, for instance, activities, and you have to come up with a network diagram. Or alternatively, I might give you a network diagram, and I might ask you when or what's the total duration for this project. Alright, so you'll have to work out what's the critical path, what are the factors that's going to influence it. Alright, so that's for critical path analysis, and the same with PERT. Right, so there's definitely going to be questions on a PERT, and there's definitely going to be questions on CPA and CPM. Alright, so you'll also have to explain why and what we use S-curves for. Alright, so make sure that you're able to interpret the use of an S-curve and understand what the typical answers would be for that. From that, you will also have to understand what earned value management is. So there's might be a calculation on earned value management, the last assignment that we did. Alright, so focus on that, and also the results that you get from earned value management, make sure that you can interpret those as well. Good news, there's no question on line of balance. All right, so I'm sure most of you guys are quite happy about that. The line of balance question in the previous assignment was a little bit hairy, but nothing to be too concerned about. All right, so that deals with question type number 1. Any questions so far? Still happy? All right, so let's move on to question type number 2. And these questions, obviously, these are the ones that are random. All right, so these questions might not be the same when you do the assignment or when you do the quiz. All right, so there's a bank of 60 questions, and the system will randomly assign 30 of those questions to your test. And this means that basically you might have a 50% chance of getting the same questions in your second attempt. Alright, so still worth it going through it with a lot of attention the first time, just to make sure that you get the most benefit out of it. For these questions, you must know where to find the information in your resource material, and also specifically look at those little notes that I gave out every week with the videos. If you go and have a look at those and print the PDFs, make sure that you have them handy. Maybe take some of those little notes that you can stick into the book and mark the information clearly so that you can see where they are. Alright, so these questions, all of them are going to count 1 mark, and some of the questions you'll just immediately know. So you'll read the question, and within about 5 seconds you'll say, oh, okay, this is obvious, this is the answer. Some of them you might have to think a little bit, and in some cases you might even have to take out your calculator to work out. Alright, so specifically what I might ask there is, I might give you information on 4 or 5 activities, and I might say, what's the total duration for these activities? And I'll give you a successor and a predecessor, and you'll quickly have to draw a little diagram and come up with the critical path to work out the duration for that project. Easy stuff, don't worry, it's really easy stuff. Alright, so that's the second type of question. So what do we cover in the first part of the test? Networks, alright, and not all of it is calculation based. Alright, so make sure that you have with you a few notes on the different types of networks that we have, arrow or activity on arrow or any of those, and make sure that you know what the advantages of each of those are. Alright, so when do we use PERT? When do we use CPM? What do we use a Gantt chart for? All of those are the types of questions that you need to answer. Alright, once again, remember it's multiple choice, and it's easy to get confused because the questions are designed to confuse you. Alright, it's in that sense it might be a little bit confusing. So there might be a difference between just a word or two in an answer, and you'll have to choose the right one. Alright, earned value management, as I say, know your acronyms and know what each of those mean, and also have a look at the graphs that go with an earned value management solution. Alright, so know how to interpret those. Critical path method, we spoke about those ones, and we sort of know what's going to happen there. Alright, so make sure that you know exactly how to work them. PERT and GERT, when do we use PERT, when do we use GERT? If you don't know what GERT is, go through the, we didn't do an example on that one, but you're welcome to go and have a look at the resource material again. When do we use PERT? The typical answer there would be in a system where, or in a scenario where we have statistics involved, statistical chances. So for instance, research and development. Pharmaceutical companies might use PERT more than construction companies. Alright, and then crashing of a project. Alright, you did that in the previous assignment, so I have a good idea of what's going to happen there. And then the last section that you need to understand, there's a few calculations that you have to do. Net present value, payback period, and cash flow, time value of money. Alright, so have a look at topic number 4. What I typically will give you is I'll give you a set of cash flows. Alright, so I might give you one positive cash flow, and 5 negative cash flows, and I might ask you a question: what is the payback period? What is the internal rate of return for this project? Or is this a good project to invest in? Or what is the net present value of the capital flows of this specific project? Alright, so have a look at topic number 4. The examples that you have there will equip you with enough information to go through the quiz without any hassles. Alright, so that's what we deal with in question type number 1. If we look at question type number 2, and this is also the last slide that we have to do, characteristics of capital projects. Alright, so find out in your resource material, in the notes that we have, what the characteristics are. Make sure that you mark it clearly in your open book. This is an open book, so part of your preparation will be to go through the resource material to understand where to find it. Alright, so hopefully during the term you've already read through your notes and you have a very good idea of where to go and find the information already. The common elements of a project. Alright, what's common of a project? So who are the role players? Who's the stakeholders? What is a project execution plan? What is the definition for a project? All of those types of questions we need to think about. Alright, you can easily get into trouble with those types of questions because it is, as I say, it's written in a difficult type of way, so it's written and designed to confuse you. Alright, and then what's the difference between scope definition, scope creep, and scope growth? Right, remember, creep is unauthorized, while growth is an authorized type of increase in the scope. What is a dummy activity? Alright, make sure you have a good definition of a dummy and make sure that you understand where it finds application. That question is definitely going to be there. Stakeholders, role players, project phases. Understand how they fit in together. What is a stage gate approach? What do we do in the different phases of the different projects? What's the outputs that we typically have for the different phases? And then of course, what's the difference between crashing a project, fast tracking a project, and acceleration of a project? And then work breakdown structures. We basically have two ways of displaying that. The first way is just in a nice little graph, the organizational structure type approach. And the second way is, of course, in a numerical way. So make sure that you understand how to show a work breakdown structure in a numerical way. For instance, I might ask you, activity number 1.2.1, is it a sub-activity of activity 1.1? Alright, and you have to say yes or no based on the information of the question. Alright, so if you listen to the question again carefully, 1.2.1, is it a sub-activity of activity number 1.1? You should be able to say no. Well, I'm rather looking at main activity 1.2. So 1.2.1 would be a sub-activity of activity number 1.2. Alright, so there's the whole exam in a nutshell. Really easy stuff, nothing too difficult. Any questions?